You close the door, grab your keys, and step outside. And in that exact moment, something changes inside your home that you never see. Something quiet, something emotional, something that, if you truly understood it, would completely change the way you look at your dog forever. Because what your dog does when you're not home isn't just random behavior. It's a message, and most owners are completely missing it. Think about this for a second. The moment you leave, what do you imagine your dog does? Sleeps? Walks around? Maybe chews something? That's the story we tell ourselves because it feels simple, comfortable. But what if I told you that for many dogs, the moment you disappear, their entire emotional state shifts in ways that are far more intense than you think? And here's where it gets interesting. Because not all dogs react the same way. Some stay calm, some get restless, and some go through something that looks a lot like panic. But that's not the real reason you're here. Because what your dog does physically is only the surface. The real story is happening inside their mind. Picture this. You leave the house, and your dog hears the sound of the door closing. At first, there's silence. A few seconds pass. Then they walk to the door. They sniff. They listen. They wait. Not because they're bored, but because they're trying to understand something. Where did you go? And more importantly, are you coming back? Now you might think, of course my dog knows I'll come back. But here's the truth that most dog owners don't realize. Dogs don't understand time the way you do. They don't think in hours or schedules. They live in moments, in presence, in connection. So when you're gone, it's not just you'll be back in a few hours to them. It can feel uncertain, even confusing. And this is where things start to shift. Some dogs will slowly walk away from the door and settle down. But others, they stay. They wait longer than you'd expect. They listen for sounds that aren't there. A car outside, footsteps, a key in the lock. And when nothing happens, that's when the emotional tension begins. But that's not the part that should concern you the most. Because what happens next depends on something deeper. Your dog's emotional dependency on you. You see, when a dog is strongly attached to you in a healthy way, they can handle your absence. They might miss you, but they regulate themselves. They rest. They relax. They wait calmly. But when that attachment becomes unbalanced, something else happens. Your absence doesn't feel like a break. It feels like a loss. And this is where things get dangerous, because now your dog isn't just waiting. They're reacting. They start pacing, walking from room to room, checking. Places where you usually sit, your bed, the couch, the door again, over and over. Not randomly, but with purpose. They're searching for you, and when they can't find you, that's when stress starts to build. Now here's something that might surprise you. Some dogs don't bark loudly when you leave. They don't destroy things. They don't make a scene. Instead, they shut down. They become unusually quiet. They lie in one spot for long periods, not because they're calm, but because they're emotionally overwhelmed, and this is often misunderstood, because silence looks like peace. But sometimes, it's the opposite. And then there are dogs who express it differently. They bark, not just randomly, but in bursts, at sounds, at nothing, at everything. Because their environment suddenly feels uncertain, they chew things they normally wouldn't touch. Shoes, furniture, doors. But here's the part most people get wrong. They think it's bad behavior. They think the dog is being stubborn, disobedient, even naughty. But what most dog owners don't realize is your dog isn't trying to misbehave. They're trying to cope. And the way they cope depends on how they feel when you're gone. Let me ask you something. Have you ever come home and found something destroyed? And your dog looks at you in a way that feels almost guilty? That look isn't guilt in the way humans feel it. It's anticipation. They've learned your reaction. They're reading your energy. and they're trying to prepare for what comes next. But that's still not the deepest part of this, because what your dog does when you're not home is not just about that moment. It's about a pattern that builds over time. Every time you leave, every time you return, every time they experience that emotional shift. And here's where things get even more interesting. The way you leave your house matters more than you think. If you create a big emotional moment before leaving, talking to your dog, giving extra attention, saying goodbye in an intense way, you might think you're being loving, but in your dog's mind, you're creating contrast. You're amplifying the difference between you here and you gone. And that makes your absence feel even bigger. And this is where many people unknowingly make a mistake. They increase their dog's emotional dependency without realizing it. So when they leave, the drop feels sharper. And when they return, the excitement feels explosive. But that cycle, over time, can create instability. And this is the part most people never see, because it's happening quietly inside your dog's mind. Now imagine this scenario. You leave your house every day. Your dog experiences stress every time. Maybe small at first, maybe bigger over time. But it keeps repeating. That stress doesn't just disappear, it accumulates. It builds patterns in your dog's behavior, in their reactions, in their emotional baseline, and eventually it could start showing up even when you're home. Restlessness, over-attachment, following you everywhere, reacting strongly when you move from one room to another. And suddenly, it's not just about when you're gone anymore. It's about how they feel, all the time. But here's the twist that most people don't expect. Not all dogs who struggle when you're gone will show obvious signs. Some dogs adapt in ways that look normal. They might sleep a lot, stay quiet, seem easy, but internally, they may still be experiencing subtle stress. And over time, that can affect their overall behavior, mood, even health, because emotional stress in dogs doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes, it's quiet. And this is why understanding what your dog does when you're not home is so important. Because it's not about catching them in the act. It's about understanding their experience. Now you might be wondering, how do you even know what your dog is doing when you're not there? And that's a good question. Some people use cameras. Some notice patterns in behavior. Some pick up on small clues. But the real answer isn't just in watching your dog. It's in understanding them. Understanding their energy, their attachment style, their reactions before you leave and after you return. Because those moments reveal everything. For example, if your dog becomes overly excited when you come back, jumping, whining, unable to calm down, that's not just happiness, it's release. Release of built-up tension, and if that reaction is extreme, it tells you something important about what they experienced while you were gone. But that's not the real solution either, because the goal isn't just to observe, it's to shift the experience. And here's the part that changes everything. And just when you think you've understood everything, there's one more layer that almost no one talks about. Because even if your dog doesn't bark, doesn't destroy things, and doesn't show obvious stress, it doesn't automatically mean they're completely okay. Sometimes the most important signals are the quiet ones. Have you ever noticed how your dog behaves right before you leave? That moment when you pick up your keys, or wear your shoes, or move toward the door. Some dogs don't react at all on the outside. But if you look closely, their body tells a different story. Their ears shift slightly. Their eyes follow you more closely. Their breathing changes just a little. That's anticipation, and anticipation over time can turn into anxiety, even before you've actually left. But that's not the part most people catch, because the real shift happens in what your dog learns to expect. If every time you leave, your dog experiences confusion, tension, or emotional discomfort, they don't just react in the moment. They start preparing for it in advance. And this is where things get deeper than simple behavior. This becomes conditioning. Your dog begins to associate small signals with a bigger emotional outcome. Keys in your hand don't just mean you're going out. They mean something uncomfortable is about to happen. And once that connection is built, it doesn't go away on its own. It grows, slowly, quietly, until one day your dog is reacting before anything has even happened. But here's the twist that surprises most people. The goal is not to stop your dog from noticing when you leave. That's impossible. The goal is to change what it means to them. Right now, for many dogs, your absence feels like uncertainty. But what if it felt normal instead? What if leaving the house didn't create tension, but simply became part of a predictable, safe routine? Because dogs don't need you to be there every second. They need to feel stable, even when you're not. And this is where your awareness becomes powerful, because small changes in your behavior can completely reshape your dog's experience. For example, think about how you return home. Do you rush in with excitement? Do you immediately give attention, affection, energy? It feels natural. You missed your dog. They missed you. But what you're reinforcing in that moment is intensity. You're teaching your dog that your return is a huge emotional event, which also means your absence becomes a huge emotional drop. And that emotional contrast is what creates the cycle. But if you come home calmly, if you allow your dog to settle before giving attention, something different happens. You remove the extremes. You create balance. And slowly, your dog starts to feel it too. Now here's something even more interesting. Dogs are incredibly sensitive to your internal state. Not just what you do, but how you feel. If you leave the house in a rush, stressed, distracted, emotionally charged, your dog picks up on that energy. They don't understand your schedule. They understand your presence. So when your energy feels unstable, their environment feels unstable. And when you leave in that state, it lingers. But when you leave calmly, without tension, without emotional buildup, you're sending a completely different signal. You're telling your dog, without words, that everything is okay, that nothing is wrong, that this moment is just normal. And over time, that message becomes their reality. But this is where most people underestimate the process, because they expect quick results. They try something once or twice, and when nothing changes immediately, they assume it doesn't work. But your dog's patterns weren't created in a day. They were built over time, through repetition, through consistency, through emotional experiences. And changing those patterns requires the same process: patience, consistency, awareness. Because every time you leave calmly, every time you return without intensity, every time you allow your dog to regulate themselves instead of immediately stepping in, you're rewriting something inside their mind. And at first, you might not see it. There won't be a dramatic shift overnight, but something subtle will begin to change. Your dog will pause instead of react. They'll watch instead of panic. They'll settle instead of search. And one day, you'll realize something. The door closes. You leave. And your dog doesn't follow, doesn't rush, doesn't spiral into stress. They simply accept it. Not because they don't care, but because they feel safe. And that moment is everything. Because it means your dog trusts the environment, even without you in it. It means they've learned something deeper than obedience. They've learned emotional stability. And that's the part most people never reach, because they focus on controlling behavior instead of understanding it. But once you shift that perspective, everything changes. You stop asking, how do I stop my dog from doing this? And you start asking, what is my dog feeling and why? And that question leads to real answers. Because at the end of the day, your dog isn't trying to make your life difficult. They're responding to the world as they understand it. And you are the biggest part of that world. So what your dog does when you're not home is not just about those hours you're gone. It's about the emotional environment you've created. It's about the signals you send, the patterns you repeat, the energy you bring into their life every single day. And once you truly see that, you realize something powerful. You have more control than you think. Not control in the sense of force, but influence. The ability to shape how your dog experiences the world. And when you use that the right way, you don't just fix behavior. You transform it. You replace confusion with clarity, stress with calmness, uncertainty with trust. And your dog feels the difference. Not just when you're home, but even when you're gone. So the next time you step outside and close that door behind you, remember this: your dog isn't just waiting for you to come back. They're living an experience, an emotional reality shaped by everything you've taught them, intentionally or not. And that realization changes everything. Because now, you're not just leaving your dog alone. You're leaving them prepared to feel safe, prepared to stay calm, prepared to trust that everything is okay. And when you come back, it's not chaos. It's not overwhelming. It's just another moment in a stable, balanced connection. And that's the real goal. Not just a well-behaved dog, but a dog that feels secure, even in your absence. Because when your dog reaches that point, you haven't just trained them. You've understood them. And that is something most people never truly do. So if this made you think differently, even for a moment, then you've already taken the first step. And trust me, your dog will feel that change long before you ever see it.